Hello everyone, and welcome to the final episode of the first series of The Journey of a North East Entrepreneur. And as you can all see, today it's not just me sitting here talking about what my week's been. I've got a special guest.
Hey Sam.
Hello, thanks Carl for joining us.
Absolute pleasure.
Can you tell how excited I am?
Yes, and I'm excited for you.
For anyone who doesn't know Carl, which I'm sure many people who'll be watching this will know Carl already, this is Carl Swansbury. He is a corporate finance partner.
You got it.
At Ryecroft Glenton. So I thought because this was the last episode in this series, it would be really interesting to hear perspectives from other people, and particularly yourself, Carl, around what it's like to grow a business, particularly in the North East, because that's what we're focusing on. And as mentioned, just really quickly, just put a little bit of context in there. These vlogs are for people who have already got businesses, who have got established businesses possibly, or scaling businesses, who are looking for some camaraderie, some people to say, yep, I feel that, I'm going through that too. And it's also for individuals who are looking to maybe dip their toe in the water and maybe establish their own business and wants to see what the raw, harsh truth is like when we are growing businesses and what it might mean for them.
Sounds awesome.
Okay. So what we're going to do is a real quick fire round. So at the beginning of all of the episodes, Carl, what I do is I'll just talk about the week that I've had.
Okay.
Just by the themes. So I'm going to tell you the theme, and then I'd love to hear what your week has been like. For the first one, dramas.
Dramas. I think the biggest drama for me last week has actually been time. I've managed to squeeze in from bank holiday weekend, a long weekend to Palma. I had a day in the North East last Tuesday. I then had 2 days in London last Wednesday, Thursday, followed by on Friday, a day back-to-back to Newcastle and a client dinner before I flew out to Dublin for a stag do on Saturday morning, only getting back late last night. So for me, actually the full week was a drama, because I've definitely managed to squeeze into a week what probably most people would squeeze into a month. So it's been full on for sure, Sam.
But that isn't just the business. You're saying there, this is 2 stag do's.
Correct. So Palma and Dublin were stag do's. So those were 2 stag do's bookending what was a pretty intense 4-day week, what with last Monday being a bank holiday.
Yes, indeed. Great. I can't wait to hear your numbers. I have got mine as well, but I'm already feeling that your numbers might blow my numbers out of the water, because last week was half-term holidays.
Sure.
And some of us weren't on stag do's or hen do's.
Indeed.
We weren't going all around the world jet setting. So the reality is my week was quite quiet.
Nice.
In consideration for kind of what it sounds like your week was.
I'm envious.
So belly laughs. Any good belly laughs?
I think there are too many belly laughs, what with the 2 stag do's. I mean, as an example, last weekend gone in Dublin, my really good mate Scott Robinson, of course, was having his stag. He's a massive Sunderland fan. And of course, in Newcastle Airport, we decided to dress him in a full Newcastle strip. So you can only imagine the crack and banter that was levelled toward him. So to be fair, last week was probably right up there in terms of belly laughs, because rarely do you have 2 stag do's in 1 week.
Yeah. What about from a business perspective as well then? So you were absolutely full tilt last week. Did you have many belly laughs with things that were going on business-wise?
Yeah. I mean, as you know, Sam, business is difficult because there's a lot to do and you never have enough time to do it in, or at least that's what it feels like. Yeah. So my view is, you know what? You should just try and lighten the load by seeing the good in every situation. So whilst I can't say, I'm having belly laughs by the minute as a corporate finance partner, I do try and not take things too seriously, because actually things are cumbersome enough without applying pressure that is unnecessary. So I think probably the most humorous part of last week was probably going out for lunch in Yarm with the shareholders of CPD bodies down in Teesside. So we had the pleasure of advising CPD bodies. So Cathal Ducey, who is founder CEO, and his ops director David joined us for lunch in Yarm, which was brilliant. Had some cracking food, had a couple of alcohol-free beers, and we had some good crack actually. So it was really good to see the gentlemen. So that was a lovely way to round off what was a pretty intense business week.
Fabulous, that sounds brilliant. What about hours of internal meetings? Because we know that is part of our roles as leaders within businesses. How many meetings did you have internally?
So last week I had 11 internal
Wow.
meetings. The most notable, Sam, being our weekly team meeting,
Yeah.
which occurs every week, normally Monday or Tuesday, and lasts 2.5 hours. And that meeting is when we talk about clients and priorities, prospects, strategic BD, and resource. So quite a number of internal meetings, but I must say every meeting that I have internally will have an agenda. There'll be an absolute clear purpose as to why we are getting together. And if the team don't feel that we can achieve what we want to from the meetings, they will be rearranged.
Oh, wow.
So it's actually a very productive use of time.
Yeah.
I'm not willing to have a meeting unless I know that it's going to be additive.
Yeah, that's really important, isn't it? Because actually meetings can take up the majority of your day. And actually, if
can.
they're not going to give you the outcome that you need, actually that's a lot of time that's being used.
Correct.
That could be used elsewhere.
Well, correct, Sam. And I think
Yeah.
in business there is a tendency for people to suggest a meeting without really understanding, first of all, if a meeting is the right way to make progress, and secondly, whether it needs to be Teams or in person.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty insistent that before something goes into my diary, I know it's going to be worthwhile. Otherwise, I will decline the invite.
Perfect. That sounds like great advice for anyone that's listening. What about hours outside of the typical working hours, business-wise? How many extra hours have you done for the previous week?
Yeah, so people talk about work-life balance, and I must admit that's definitely still a conundrum that I'm solving. Not that there is an answer to the question of work-life balance, but definitely last week, specifically with it being a bank holiday, I probably did sort of 5 a.m. to 8 p.m, sort of Tuesday through to Friday, save for the exception of Thursday when I was down in London. That was a sort of 4 a.m. start, and I think I probably clocked off midnight Thursday. So that was a pretty tight day, but for sure, it's because not only do I love what I do, and therefore it makes it easy, but actually, the more you put in, the more you get out.
Yeah.
And I'm a big fan of improving my odds when it comes to success. So I find the harder you pedal, the luckier you get.
Yeah, because opportunities, you find opportunities there, you go, yeah, I get that, I really do. That's not your typical week though, is it? Are you working outside of hours that much on a regular basis, week to week?
So last week was definitely an exception rather than a norm, Sam. But I must say, I always have an early start, and that's because I choose to start early because I like to be ahead of the game, and I like to set the standard rather than to respond and react to other people. So as standard, 5 a.m. start. I'll always make sure I do exercise pre and post business. I think sort of, physical life makes for a positive life, and I think, for me, physical well-being is as important as mental well-being. So I'd say, normally 5 a.m. start, and I'll probably be in business from 7:30 a.m. through to 7 p.m. That's probably typical. So 12 hours is probably my standard day.
Okay, no problem. I like how you talk about physical activity and then mental activity as well, because I do think that they are linked.
Yes, they are totally linked.
It does help you when you are a business leader and you are growing a business, if you're able to have that kind of output.
Yep, totally.
And I think it's the only time when I can thoroughly switch off. Is when I'm on a treadmill,
yes,
or if I'm doing something that needs something else of me rather than just my brain, or speaking to the kids or talking about business.
Totally right.
So
no, I love exercise. I mean, whether it be a jog, a walk, paddle, squash, keep going. Minimum 10,000 steps a day, and I do clock steps. And actually, I literally could not sleep knowing I haven't done 10,000 steps.
Oh, really?
And that's really important to me, especially when I've just talked about stag parties, taking clients for very nice lunches. I mean, that's fine, but if you don't do exercise, quite quickly, you'll balloon. And I'm not sure that I want to be someone who doesn't look physically fit, because I think actually first impressions count.
Yeah. Okay, that's really interesting. Have you always been this way?
Yes.
Have you?
Always been this way. Yeah,
Right,
which I appreciate is incredibly unnerving and quite odd. But it's a true story. So if my parents were here now with us chatting, my mum and dad would say from the age of like 6, 7, I'd always be up early, waking the house up, always wanting to be outside, always very active. It's definitely part of my DNA to be active.
Yeah, that's really interesting because I do think there will be some people who will be watching this who will be like, I just cannot imagine having been able to fit in something in the morning and then fit something in the evening as well. Yeah. And I think it is about finding your personal way
Correct.
of how you deal with it and how you make yourself the most productive and high impact.
Exactly. Well, that's right, Sam. I mean, a lot of people think being at your desk equals productivity, and it doesn't.
Yeah, agreed.
The converse is true, though. A lot of people think that doing 1 hour of productive work a day will make you an overnight success, and that's also not true.
No.
So, I've always been very focused on prioritizing. So if it's urgent and important, I'm going to do it.
Oh, so the grids.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
So I don't have sort of a grid daily, but in my mind I do. So I'm thinking, right, is that urgent? And is it important? If it is, I'm going to do it first. If it's really important, but it's not urgent, I'm going to diarise a time to do it.
Nice.
Within a sensible, manageable time frame. If it's not urgent, not important, I'm then going to ask, should we be doing it full stop as a business? If the answer is yes, but I shouldn't do it, I'll delegate. If the answer is we shouldn't do it, we won't do it. And I think people can create time by prioritising better.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people choose to spend time doing things that aren't urgent and important. And of course, to that person, I'd ask, why?
Yeah.
Because there's so much more they could achieve if they just didn't.
Yeah, I think that's really good. I mean, all of the courses I've been on, the books I've read, it talks about how important that is to get that right from the outset, and then it really helps you.
Yeah.
I think I'm a different type of person, as in sometimes I get so caught up in things, and then I'll walk through the door at 7 o'clock at night and I'll think, woe's me.
Yes.
When the reality is, if I'd been a bit more structured, if I'd been a bit more disciplined, then actually I wouldn't have been walking through the door at that time and I wouldn't have been so tired.
Yes.
So I think it is one of those things that is great advice that you really need to take by the horns and actually put it into make it a behaviour. Is it a behaviour?
It is. It's habitual. It's definitely habitual, Sam.
Yeah.
Spot on. So it's funny because the only commodity that we should value is time, but it's the commodity that people will give away most freely.
Yeah.
So if I asked you now to give me £10,000, you might have issue with that. If I asked you to give me 2 hours of your time, you'd probably agree.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting? Because when we are on our deathbed, the only thing you'll want is more time, yet you'll have spent your life giving it away.
Yeah.
It's fascinating why people do that. And I think people need, sadly, to have either tragedy or need to lose someone they love to learn that lesson. Because until you realise the value of time, you'll do things that aren't urgent and important. And I do know the value of time, and therefore, quite frankly, I'm not going to have it wasted by anyone, including myself or anyone around me come to that.
Oh, I totally respect that. I think I'm going to leave today, actually trying to sort myself out.
This is not a therapy session, Sam, by the way.
Well, actually, I do feel like sometimes these episodes are like a therapy session, and anyone who listens and watches them on a regular basis will see me go, blah, say it all. So now I feel like I'm going to leave the offices feeling like I need to sort my life out a bit more.
Good, that's positive.
I was spent networking. How much have you done? It sounds like you've done loads, but give me a number.
Yeah, I'm not sure Dublin counts as networking. I certainly spent a lot of hours talking, but whether it was productive and will result in future business, I'm not too sure. But as a corporate finance partner who is responsible for generating new business for RG, of course, a lot of my time is spent with professional friends and connections, trying to support them and their clients who need advice when it comes to buying a business, selling a business, positioning a business for a buyout or buy-in, as examples, Sam. So I do an awful lot of business development or networking. So last week I clocked 12 hours specifically, but that's probably underestimated because actually almost every hour of every day you are given the opportunity to set your stall out. And therefore, as an example today, after this conversation, I'm off to the fire station in Sunderland for UK Startup and Scale Up Week.
For Lancaster.
That's right, where I'm delivering the keynote welcome alongside Zara Davies.
Oh, you're doing that?
Which I'm really excited about.
Fabulous.
So whilst, of course, that is not networking as such, because I'm going to be sat on a stage with Sarah, having a conversation about her career and how she's gone about scaling up her business. Of course, in the room are hundreds of entrepreneurs, and if I share only one or two things that they benefit from, then perhaps I will be able to benefit them and their businesses, and in turn that might result in follow-up conversation. So I think each and every day, Sam, we all get the chance to set our stall out, and therefore I don't think I'm ever networking or doing BD because I'm always on, so to speak.
That absolutely makes sense, and I think anyone who'll be watching this will need to be doing that if they're not already doing that, though.
Well, no one's going to promote your business better than you.
Agreed.
And if you can't promote your business, then who else will? So for sure, I think that we as founders are absolutely always on and should always be ready to present our business.
Totally, that's great. What about interesting client conversations? How many did you clock up last week?
Yeah, well, so back to important and urgent. Every conversation is important, because if it's not, I'm not having it. And I appreciate that sounds a bit sort of cliche, but it's a true story. So all of the conversations I have are impactful, but the one conversation I had last week, which I thought was the most interesting, and actually it stopped me in my tracks, was I spoke to the founder, shareholder, CEO of a London-based professional services staffing business. And she is starting to consider the sale of her business. And I have spoken with her for 3-4 years now, anticipating this D-Day, if you will. And she's now coming close to appointing a corporate finance advisory firm to advise on the sale of her business. And we had a really good 1-hour conversation. It was all about me presenting how I'd advise her on the sale of the business, what the scope of work looks like, how we would charge fees, etc. And at the end, she asked a question, and it genuinely sort of caught me by surprise, which is quite infrequent nowadays.
I couldn't imagine you being surprised.
It took me quite a long time, it felt, to actually calibrate and respond. The question was, Carl, obviously, you are successful, you are highly capable, and arguably too busy. And I can see now on social media how many other interests you have outside of RG. If I engage you, do you have time to give me the advice that I need?
Oh, wow.
Which was a killer question.
Wow.
Because for the first time, Sam, I actually saw the downside of having profile and being perceived as someone who's highly active. Because actually, what perhaps she would have seen more value in is someone who is more subtle, more subdued, and perhaps doesn't have as many moving parts as I do. So that was really interesting.
So interesting, because we're all told that our personal brands, get them out there, show that you're energetic, put your heart on your sleeve, show people what you're getting involved in, show how extensive your network is.
Correct.
But actually, as a consequence, that might make someone who wants to have a relationship with you think you're too busy, you're not able to give them what you need.
That's it.
Oh my goodness, that's a little bit. Thank you very much.
That was a really interesting question, and my response was, thank you, that's a good question. I said, first of all, if I and my business did not have sufficient capacity and resource to advise you to the highest standard, we wouldn't take on the assignment. I said, but secondly, whilst yes, you asked whether I have the capacity and bandwidth. Of course, at RG, we have 150 people, and I will be supported by an incredibly capable, high-performing team. There'll be a deal team of 4. I will be the partner, and yes, the book stops here. But of course, it will not just be me who will be advising. But I did then say, and this is, I think, what stands me out from the crowd. I did say, because it's true, at the business end of the transaction, you might need to speak to me as partner Friday, 11 p.m. or Sunday morning when you're deliberating which buy to go with. I will be accountable and contactable 24/7, 7 days a week. And I think that matters because a lot of my peers say that, but wouldn't be. I say it, and I absolutely am. I couldn't be more accessible because I think you have to be.
I totally agree with you. Wow, what was her response? What did she say?
She said, thank you very much. She said, I appreciate it was a tough question and I'm delighted I asked it. So I'm hoping I said enough, but we'll find out soon. But either way, it was a really interesting question to have asked.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because actually all the things that I bleat on about and talk about is the importance of being out there and being seen and using your voice. And actually you do need to just think about it with a bit of balance by the sounds of it.
I think that's right. I think that's right.
Perfect. Talking about balance, work-life balance, you mentioned it earlier, the week that's just gone, how successful, thumbs up or thumbs down, was your work-life balance? And I think we all know what you're going to say on this one.
Yeah.
Thumb up or thumb down?
So, Sam, that's an unfair question because you're asking me to answer in a binary way. So genuinely, so if you asked Wendy, my wife, that question, she'd say massive thumbs down.
Okay.
But I don't think that's true because I know that I had a lot on last week. Everything was important and urgent. I prioritised. I was prepared. And actually, despite everything I've said, I delivered everything on time to a high standard, and we achieved a lot last week. And I managed to have 2 stag do's for 2 different friends that are highly important. And both absolutely are people that I wanted to be there to support and to have one final hurrah with pre-big day. So I think last week my work-life balance was fine, and I'm sat here today feeling sharp, on top of the world, and better off for it. So I think it's a mindset thing. And was last week full on? Yeah. Was it exhausting? Sure. But did I die as a consequence? No. And have people got worse things to have to deal with? For sure. So I think overall, I'm pretty happy with last week's work-life balance, albeit, you know what, a little bit more sleep would be canny. I wouldn't mind an extra half hour here, there and everywhere, but hey, you know, I guess we'll sleep when we're dead.
I love your perspective.
We will. I mean, we're going to have years of sleep, you know. So in the meantime, it feels like it's cheating.
And the last thing before I've got one kind of killer question that I want to put out there.
Shoot.
But the last thing on the what did your week look like previous week, dedicated learning hours. Did you manage? I think as a leader of business, I'm really keen to keep learning. I actually get a lot of my energy from learning.
Yes.
How much time did you get last week to be able to learn?
Yeah, good question. So last week I had a 30-minute only conference call with my mentor, which was excellent.
Yeah.
So that's weekly. And then monthly we have a 2-hour in-person. So I did have my weekly mentoring call. We were focused on actually the area, which I find really interesting, of sort of getting more out of people around you, which is such an interesting subject.
Super interesting one.
So that was the only sort of specific area of self-development last week that I invested in, albeit, as I said, when I spoke to the lady from the business in London, I feel I'm learning all the time. I mean, every day is a school day for me, and I'm not sort of ignorant or arrogant enough to know that there's so much more that I don't know that I want to learn. But I actually think, given what I do professionally, I learn a lot from my clients. And I learn a lot from other professionals that I have the privilege of working alongside. And likewise, you know, within RG, we've got 16 partners and 150 staff. So I actually learn a lot from others. People think that you can only learn from those who are senior to you or mature to you in years, and that's not true.
It's not true.
Before this chat, I was telling you that my daughter, who's 8, teaches me more than most adults I know. And that's because she's got a naivety that most humans have drained out of them. And she sees things through a different lens to most adults who are quite cynical, quite unwilling to give people a chance, because, you know, we've all made mistakes, whereas my daughter is seeing things for the first time. So I think that I learn so much from everyone. It doesn't just have to be a sort of a formal training course or my mentoring sessions with Carl Beckett.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think the bit that I enjoy, I take a lot of pressure off myself by looking at every opportunity as a learning opportunity.
Yes, totally.
Because actually sometimes the tougher times are actually when you will learn more.
Big time, big time. It's totally true. And you know what, it's funny because we've all got friends or family members or colleagues who perhaps, by design or otherwise, perhaps aren't willing to take on things that push them outside of their comfort zone. You know, they like predictability. They want things to be very manageable, and there are reasons for that, and I respect that. But from my perspective, actually, you know, the saying, if you want something doing, give it to a busy person, is quite important. I think when you're really busy and you're under the cosh, I think you're sharp, you're focused, you can very quickly make astute decisions. Sometimes if you've got too much time, you will talk yourself out of everything.
Yeah.
And you can navel gaze for too long if you're not careful. And as an
Yeah.
entrepreneur,
Yeah.
instinct matters.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I think under pressure, I am at my best, which is actually reflecting on your question of earlier, Sam. I think the reason why I put myself under pressure and the reason I've always got more on my plate than I probably should have is because that's when I perform to my best.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's because you know yourself really well, though.
Yeah.
It sounds like this is years and years in the making of
Totally.
really being able to help you work at that level that gives you the peak performance that you're looking
Yes,
for.
I think that's right.
And I think if anyone was starting their journey new and was maybe coming out of a corporate career, for example, and going into establishing their own business, there are different behaviours that might be associated with that. And
Correct.
it is about getting into those rhythms,
Totally.
getting into those kind of behaviours and those habits where you can perform at the very best that you can perform in.
Correct. I think that's spot on. And, Good to Great by Covey,
Yes,
really good book.
very good book.
And also, whilst not in that book, the thing that is really important to me is marginal gains.
Yes.
So actually, keep doing what you do, improve what you do slightly. The impact compounded over time can be phenomenal.
Yeah.
And that's really important.
And isn't that a funny one though, Carl? Because I think a lot of entrepreneurs and founders are impatient.
Yes.
I'm impatient.
Likewise, I can relate.
Yeah.
I'm impatient
So
too.
it's sometimes hard just to kind of slow it down slightly and do everything with intention.
Yes.
Because sometimes I think that a lot of entrepreneurs are known for following the shiny thing. We're
Yes.
a bit like magpies. That's an excellent
Yeah,
idea. Let's
that's
look
right.
at that.
Totally.
But what you're saying is, if you slow it down and make sure that you are intentionally focusing on the right things, then those decisions don't become decisions that you do overthink, or then you might take the risk on and all those sorts of things.
Correct. Well, I mean, it's walk before you can run.
Yes.
Think before you speak.
Yeah.
So for me, it's all about why. So why do you want to set up a recruitment business? And until you can answer that quite precisely, without having to really think about it, don't do it. Because if you don't know why, then for sure you're not going to succeed.
Yes.
And once you know why, and you've got your mission statement or your purpose, that's when you can talk about tactical and strategic priorities. What have we got to do to realise our vision for our business? But in a competitive world whereby everyone is running harder than the next person, if you don't know why, then not only will you not succeed, in my opinion, but if you do succeed, actually you'll never have contentment, because you need to know why you're doing it to be content.
Because you'll never reach the goal.
Well, that's right.
The goal just keeps moving.
That's right. There's always, more growth. There's always more profitability. There's always an extra £1 million of value you can add onto the value of your business. So why? Is this lifestyle? Great. Is this about building a business you can sell for £10 million? Fine. Or is it about working with a collection of people that you want to work with because you've got a no dickhead policy? All of these things are fine, but make sure you know why. Yeah. Otherwise, you'll be pretty disappointed in the future.
I love that. That's brilliant advice. Being so early in our journey for Talent Heads, and I've only had the business 4.5 years. Sometimes things do evolve, and rightly so.
Of course.
But actually, having that kind of very clear goal, your goal, not someone else's goal, because what other people's definition of success is very different in some cases.
Yep.
And when you are a first-time entrepreneur, founder, you can be led quite easily.
Yes.
And that takes you off the path. That helps you have more impact.
I think that's right. And people have got different agendas.
Yes.
And whilst I think it's nice that you can take people's input and you can respect the view of others, fundamentally, if you set up a business and you are the sole shareholder or the lion shareholder, then absolutely no one will want for your business more than you. And actually, you do have to be, to some extent, quite pig-headed, because some people will take you down the wrong path because they don't have the same why as you. And they're not wrong or right, but point is why. You need to know why.
Yeah, love that. I've taken so much away from this already. Right, final question. Are you ready? So if you had to sum up what a growing business has really taught you, so not the business, not the market, but has really taught you about yourself, what would you say?
So I think there's two parts to that, if you don't mind. So I think the first thing it's taught me is the harder you work, the luckier you become. And the one trait I have is just an ability to work harder than most people. And one thing I say to my team, and I'm sure they roll their eyes when I do, but it's a true statement: I'll never expect anyone around me to do anything that I'm not already doing.
Yes.
and I am the hardest working member of my team.
Okay.
Full stop. And I don't say that because I want plaudits. I don't say that as a badge of honour. What I am saying is, the harder you work, the luckier you get. And that's a fact.
And are you saying you create your own luck?
I am indeed saying
that's
that.
exactly what you're saying.
I'm absolutely saying that. So don't want to get too deep on a Monday, but manifestation for me is really important. So you have to know your why. You've got to visualise it. Then you've got to manifest it. You've got to bring things into your existence. But of course, you can't just sit at home in your boxer shorts in a dark room and manifest success, because you need action.
Yeah.
So vision with action is outcome.
Yeah.
So for me, yes, manifestation is important, and I'm a big believer of the law of attraction. So if you haven't read it, and likewise your viewers haven't read The Secret by Rona Byrne, that book changed my life when I was 16, 17 years of age, because anything and everything is possible, as long as you've got the right mindset and you can manifest. But none of that will matter without hard work. I don't think I've ever met an entrepreneur who has built a successful business without hard work.
Yeah, agreed.
Full stop. And of course, hard work can mean different things to different people, but fundamentally, anything worth having ain't easy.
Yeah.
So I will always choose to be, certainly at this stage in my life, the hardest working person in the room. And I'm fine with that. The second thing, which is perhaps the thing I've learned in business from the people I've had the privilege of working alongside, and it's always something that I've done, but I think I do it now consciously rather than subconsciously, is the importance of helping people.
Yeah.
And by that I mean, a lot of people spend their entire day doing things that impact and benefit themselves. And again, some people won't like what I'm going to say here. I think that's really selfish.
Okay, yeah.
Because actually, it's not all about you. And the world doesn't care about you. And the world doesn't exist to serve you.
No.
It's all about, I think, paying it forward.
I agree.
And if you can do something for charity, why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
If you can support a friend who's struggling at work because they've just received notification of redundancy, why wouldn't you? And similarly, if you get an invite to go to a friend's stag do, even though you've got loads on, why wouldn't you? So for me, it's all about putting people first, because I think that engenders a real selflessness, which I respect in people.
Yeah, and I think that does come back. It doesn't matter when or how or what. I think that kind of community aspect, of being an active part, bringing your best self to help other people, that is just great all round.
It is.
And actually, for me, it's that's the bit that actually gives me the buzz, when you're making an impact to communities or to other people.
Absolutely.
And then it'll all come back and it'll help business.
It does. And you know what? For those of us who are sort of focused more on our current business, whether we're setting a business up or we're trying to grow a business, and of course, resources are tight, time is tight.
Yeah.
But genuinely, there's nothing more gratifying than doing something that benefits someone else.
I agree.
And I think that I probably spend, half a day to a day a week doing things that I know do not benefit me. But you know what? I feel better for having done good, and therefore indirectly I'm better off. So it's quite a selfish act, but I'm fine with it.
No, I completely agree. Carl, that was fabulous.
It was. I really enjoyed it, actually.
That was really good. Did you enjoy it?
I did. It was a
Usually
good
you're on the
chit-chat.
other side, aren't you?
That's right. I've had a good grilling and I quite enjoyed it, which is weird. I appreciate it, but I enjoyed that chat.
Yeah, thank you.
Sam.
I've taken loads away from this.
Have you?
Yes,
Good.
absolutely loads. So I'm sure anyone who's listening, who's watching, will also have things to take away for them as well. So Carl, on behalf of myself and everyone listening and watching, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Sam. It's been lovely to spend some time with you too.
Oh, you too. And enjoy
Thank
tonight
you.
as well. That sounds as if it's going to be fantastic.
Thanks, Sam.
If anyone's watching has got any ideas, suggestions, recommendations for season 2 of The Journey of a North East Entrepreneur, drop me a line. It's sam@talentheads.co.uk. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks.